I'm Keaton Fletcher, an assistant professor of industrial organizational psychology at Colorado State University.
And I'm Mariana Arvon, an organizational psychologist who specializes in organization and talent development.
And this is Healthy Work. All right, and welcome back to another episode of Healthy Work. And I'm joined by an awesome guest today, and I'll get out of the way and let you introduce yourself.
Oh, okay. Hi, Keaton. My name is Mikaila Ortynsky. I'm a rising fourth-year PhD candidate at the Telfer School of Management here at the University of Ottawa in Ottawa, Canada. Happy belated Canada Day. And yeah, my research interests are basically around health and work, specifically women's health and mental health.
That's so awesome. First of all, happy belated Canada Day and happy early 4th of July for us Americans. Actually, I think when this gets posted, it will be late for both of those things. But, emotionally, that's where we're at right now, is in between our two holidays. But I have you here because you recently published a paper in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology that I just thought was so cool. Now, I would love it if you could give me an overview of those.
I'm glad you thought it was cool. So basically what our paper is about is we were interested in periods at work. And I should mention I conducted this study during my master's at Memorial University of Newfoundland, where I was supervised by Dr. Alison Byrne.
Wait, can we pause? Because I'm half Newfie.
Oh my God.
And so
really?
I love that this research was done in Newfoundland. Just shout out to Newfoundland and the amazing people who live there. That's all. And also, when you say periods, you mean menstrual periods, right? We're not talking like temporal periods. We're talking menstruation.
We are talking about menstruation, yeah.
Let's go.
What we're interested in is menstruation at work. And we collaborated with Anika Cloutier from Dalhousie University and Erica Carlton from the University of Regina. And for anyone listening who isn't super familiar with what a period is or what menstruation is, it occurs to females over a 28-day cycle, but the period itself, also known as menstruation, typically occurs for 5 days, and that's a result of a plummet of estrogen and progesterone, two sex hormones. And during the period or menstruation, basically what happens is a wide array of symptoms, which are very bothersome to women. So these symptoms are like headaches, menstrual cramps, like stomach cramps, a lack of focus. So it really is encompassing of the whole body. And what makes it interesting around work is that it occurs primarily over one's career. So the typical onset for a menstrual period is around age 12, and it lasts all the way up till menopause. So typically around age 50. And despite this happening over one's career, we do not know very much about menstrual periods at work. To my knowledge, there is only one other study published in a Management IO journal that investigates menstrual periods at work, and that's by Daphna Motro. And they looked at period pain at work, and what they found is when women were menstruating, they experienced period pain, and that led to a decrease in helping behaviors. But what we were interested as a research team is just kind of like, how does the general presence of menstrual periods affect work performance? So what we did is we recruited 108 women from an online recruitment platform, and we got them to fill out a 5-minute survey every single day for 30 days, weekends included, holidays included. And what we found is when women are menstruating, their work performance decreases. And this was through like 3 facets of work performance, that being task performance. So like, are you actually doing your job? Work withdrawal behaviors. So that's kind of like maybe you're at your job, but not exactly doing it to the best of your abilities. And then organizational citizenship behaviors. So kind of like going above and beyond what your job suggests you should do. So what we found is a decrease in task performance and organizational citizenship behaviors and an increase in work withdrawal behaviors. And why that happened is because women felt lower levels of self-control. So that's kind of like being confident that you control your impulses, willpower in a way, and then also lower emotional control as well. So that's kind of feeling like you can control your emotions, like you're not going to burst out crying or get angry. And very interesting too is we found that when women were experiencing period pain, which 90% of women do, these relationships were way worse. So task performance and organizational citizenship behavior went down, and where work withdrawal went up when they were experiencing period pains. But I do want to point out, Keaton, we are not suggesting that we shouldn't hire women or we shouldn't promote women or, oh, like women can't be reliable at work. That is totally irresponsible to say, and we're not suggesting that whatsoever. What we are suggesting is the fact that men and women are different, and women aren't small men. And that's Stacey Symes, she's a very interesting period researcher who initially kind of sparked this interest in mine. Men operate on a 24-hour cycle and women operate on a 28-day cycle. So we kind of live in a default male world. A lot of the clinical research around like health, drugs, and studies coming out of medicine and biology, they have men as their default. And the reasons they don't study women is because they're like, oh, women are too complicated. They have like too many fluctuations. But what's interesting is there was a recent report by McKinsey and Company, as well as the World Economic Forum, that reported because we live in such like a default male world, we are going to miss out on $1 trillion of economic growth by 2040 because women are in poor health 25% more time than men. And I actually saw a recent study this morning that only 4% of NIH funding goes towards women's health and like the study of women. So overall, like what we want to say is that like we don't know how women like function in the workplace. So we need to stop thinking about like our default male policies and just like when we're making policies, like wondering like who are we excluding from the policies? And then also the fact that like overall, man or woman, bodies fluctuate. So us as organizational scholars and practitioners, we have to recognize that people's health fluctuates, people's mood fluctuates too. So accounting for that in our organizational practices as well.
Wow. Thank you, first of all, for doing this work and for the like framing of this work, because I think very easily, right, you could hear those results and you just hear the people being like, well, obviously women don't belong in the workplace then because like 1 week out of the month they're not performing as well, and which is a wild take, right? Like I'm also just so glad that up front you're like, that is not the takeaway. And so I think inherently what you're getting at too is that we should be thinking about like systemic level changes. How do we structure our workplaces, our routines, our society in a way that has the flexibility then for, people who experience 1 week out of every month these negative health symptoms. I mean, I know I don't menstruate, but I do know that when I'm in pain or I have like just the babiest of colds, I'm insufferable and I cannot do my job. And I can't imagine knowing 1 week out of every month, like I'm going to be in physical pain. I might feel like I'm not in control of my emotions as much as normal, or might be a little bit more impulsive than normal. That just sounds very challenging. And so what structural changes to the workplace do you think that like we could make that would be beneficial, particularly for women? But it sounds like, I mean, any changes that we could make that would give the flexibility for women who menstruate would be helpful for anyone, like people like me that have sniffles that make me want to die.
Well, I think structurally what we can do for menstruating individuals is actually just start signaling that we support women's health. We support health in general. So for my dissertation, I'm currently working with Jennifer Dimoff, and I'm conducting some interviews right now. So maybe you can have me on the podcast later to discuss the interviews when it's all done. But from my initial discussions with menstruating individuals, is they're just saying that I just feel so stigmatized in the workplace. Like my organization doesn't have any signal that we support like women's health, that we support menstruation. So I think just as like organizations to have those free period products in the bathroom to say like, hey, we recognize that you bleed for one week of the month. You can talk about it with your manager and stuff. Or having like, I know recently menopause has become very popular in the workplace too. And even that's like a signal to menstruating individuals like, okay, yes, my organization does support me and my body as well. But I think too, if you work an office job or if you work any type of job that does have flexibility as managers, have some compassion for your employees too. Like recognize when flex time can be given, but I totally recognize too there is a wide array of jobs that do not have any flexible nature whatsoever. So I think for all workplaces, we should be having like clean and accessible facilities to tend to menstrual needs, and then any type of job that does have flexibility to offer flexibility where it's allowed.
That sounds excellent. I love that take. And the free period products remind me, like when we moved to Colorado, in a lot of like the public spaces like libraries or museums that we went to, in all the bathrooms there were free period products, and I was like, oh, that's so cool, like how supportive of a community this is. And so I can't imagine like the quality of signaling that would have if that was your workplace, right? That we have these products available because we know you're going to need them, and that's cool, like we're here for that. As an employee, like what can I do?
That's a good question. I kind of ask that question sometimes to myself as well. But I think the whole thing around tracking your menstrual cycle is very important. Some of my friends I've talked to, and then some of my participants I've talked to too, they're just like, you know what? Tracking my cycle helps me so much, because when my PMS, my like premenstrual symptoms are setting in, I know that it's going to happen in the next like 1 to 2 days, or I know my period is going to happen into the next 1 to 2 days. So just kind of the awareness of like, okay, I'm going to give myself some like self-compassion. I'm not going to go like as hard as I was the previous like 2 weeks. So I would say tracking too. And I think change starts at an employee level as well. So like if you're struggling with your period, talk to a coworker that you trust about it, because they might say, oh, yes, me too. And then maybe you can get something you can do with like your manager or your organization and solicit change that way.
Love that. Solicit that support, especially from your coworkers, right? Of like, it's period, menstruation. These are not dirty words. Saying that, like, hey, I'm struggling right now because I'm on my period, should be something that's okay to say in the workplace when you need that extra support as you go through that, or extra compassion. I love that. Did anything surprise you as you were doing this research?
Ah, yes, so much. I will say the biggest thing that surprised me from like a research angle was when women signed up for this study, we got them to like take a 30-minute survey, kind of like overviewing of like, who is this individual, the demographics. But importantly, we asked them if their organization offers any period menstrual related resources. And oh my goodness, I knew that these numbers weren't going to be high, but they were very, very low. So the highest menstrual related resource that was offered was work from home flexibility, which is not even like menstrual related. It's just a resource that could help with menstruation. So work from home flexibility, only a third of participants had access to that. And then just things that you think would be available were not available. So adequate breaks to tend to menstrual needs. Only 27% of participants had an adequate break to, change their tampon or pad. Accessible facilities to attend to menstrual needs. That was 22%. Health insurance policies to cover things like birth control if they needed it, because we know that birth control can kind of help alleviate period symptoms if they are that bad. That was only at 13%. Free menstrual products, 12%. And then menstrual leave, which is becoming quite popular actually in Europe. Spain has menstrual leave. Portugal just introduced endometriosis leave as well. That was only at 2%. So the fact that organizations kind of do not offer the bare minimum to, have a space to change your tampon was actually very surprising to me. I thought it'd be closer to 50%, but so yes, that was surprising. And then also non-research related is just the reaction to this research. I like to say I'm very fun at dinner parties when I talk about my research. Either people are like, oh, wow, this is so cool. Like, yes, I've always struggled with my period. Tell me more about this. Or people just think it's entirely disgusting. They're like, why are you wasting your time on this? Which I would say is not a waste of time. I think just talking to my friends too, talking to my female colleagues, you will most definitely find someone who struggles with their period. So yeah, those are the kind of two things that surprised me.
Wow. Both of those are surprising. The lack of resources is just bonkers to me. I mean, some of the more advanced ones like menstrual leave and endometriosis leave, but only being at 2%. Okay, I get that. This is newer. we're moving there. But like adequate breaks or adequate space to just take care of menstrual needs. Only 1 in 4 women reported that. That's wild to me. And then also, like, it is 2025. People responding with "that's disgusting" to like talking about menstruation in the workplace. Like, get over yourselves. That's not what we're doing. Like, this is just part of being a human in the workplace. I just thank you for doing this work. Which, I mean, that does bring me to my final question for you. Why do you do this work?
That's a great question, Keaton. I would say when I was initially formulating like research ideas, this was not one of them. I've always been interested in gender in the workplace, but Alicia Grandy's paper, the 3Ms paper, was assigned to me during my master's course, and kind of that was the paper that I'm like, wow, you can do this stuff. And kind of the whole thing around periods became very salient to me. Friends would always complain to me about their periods, and you're kind of like, oh, me too. And then one day I was talking to my personal trainer, and she worked at a clothing retailer, which is predominantly sells women's clothing. And she's like, I just suffer the worst period, and it's just crazy to me. They don't offer free menstrual products. Like, our staff is 99% women, and I just feel like so unsupported, and I have to like take time in the back room just to like breathe through my cramps too. And actually like looking into the literature around this and looking into just what's out there on the internet is the pain, the discomfort of a period is so present, but we don't know what's happening at work. So why I do this work is I think how women's bodies affect their work is so understudied, so underrepresented. So I want to give voice to, women like myself who have struggled with a period at work, and provide like good resources of what we can do to better their work experience, because we all have to work. It shouldn't suck. It shouldn't decrease our well-being and health.
Let's go. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for doing this work. I think it's really impressive and really important, and I appreciate you sharing it with us.
Thanks, Keaton. It was so fun to be here. Bye.
Bye. Healthy Work is a podcast written and executive produced by Keaton Fletcher and Mariana Arvon. This episode is produced, mixed, and edited by Keaton Fletcher. Artwork is by Keaton Fletcher, and our music is Zero, Microsong by Steve Combs. Please like us, follow us, and subscribe on whatever podcasting software you use, and please leave a review on the iTunes store. It really does help get us out there.